Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the launch of I Am Property, exploring polygyny and impunity in the context of customary laws in Arunachal Pradesh. Just a few introductions before we begin today. Zuban is a feminist publishing house and NGO that chronicles and participates in women's movements in India and South Asia. We are conducting this webinar as a part of Zuban's Stepping Stones and Body of Evidence projects. Stepping Stones is supported by IDRC and implemented jointly by Zuban in India and Panos South Asia in Nepal. And Body of Evidence is supported by Goethe Institute, Max Muller Bhavan. And both these projects build on Zuban and IDRC's earlier project, which is called Sexual Violence and Impunity, and aim to take its work further through creative forms like art, poetry, theater. Together, we explore what exactly impunity is, how it plays out in the medical and legal systems, and how we uphold it in our everyday lives. To find out more about this project, please check out the link in the chat box. Under this project, we have worked with more than 27 artists, poets, theater activists, and collectives across India and Nepal to create performances, engage in dialogue, and produce artwork to initiate important and often uncomfortable conversations around sexual violence and impunity. This has resulted in a collective feminist project called the Alphabet of Violence and Resistance in India and Nepal. Illustrated by artists across India and Nepal, it focuses on impunity through various lenses and the lived realities of Dalit, queer, Northeastern, Kashmiri artists, etc. This series also hopes to continue these conversations in the times to come. You can view both sets of alphabets in the chat in the link box below. I Am Property is a documentary born out of this project in collaboration with director Karry Padu and the Wildflower production. Based out of Arunachal Pradesh, Karry has been a part of the project since the inception workshop in Guwahati in 2018. It gives us immense pleasure to support and be able to host this screening today after the many roadblocks faced by the team in documenting impunity within our own communities. Today's session will touch upon gender and rights in indigenous communities and customary institutions, building collective solidarities while recognizing the elusiveness of justice. It brings to the fore the experiences of performing artists in creating work centered around these subjects and what kind of strengths, vulnerabilities, and discussions emerge as a result. I would now like to move on to introducing our speakers for today. We have Jarjum Ete as a moderator for today's session. Like we all know, Jarjum is an activist from Arunachal Pradesh belonging to the Galo tribe. She has been advocating for the rights of child brides and victims of forced marriages prevalent in some of the tribal marriage systems. Karry Padu is the director of the film today and an independent filmmaker who is the mastermind behind the Vivid project, which sheds light on issues like racism, politics, and religion and gender equality in Arunachal Pradesh. She's the director of Wildflower production based out of Itanagar. The production engages in events and various social activities, the most prominent being the Arunachal Literature and Arts Festival and the latest edition of the Yomgo River Festival at Alo. Our other panelist today is Leki Wangmo Thungon, who is currently a PhD candidate in anthropology at McGill University. Her research interests involve around the themes of gender, justice, memory, and violence. Before we begin today's session, I would like to go over a few rules for the participants joining us today. Your video and audio have been automatically turned off on entry. Please do keep them turned off. Audience questions will be taken via the chat box, which we will close once we get a certain number of questions that can be answered today. However, the raise hand function will be available to direct any queries to any of the people with Zuban in their names. We will start dealing with questions around 2:50 p.m. If there's any speaker in particular you'd want to direct your question to, please make sure to mention that as well. Due to the paucity of time, we may not be able to respond to all the questions, but both Leki and Karry are okay with dealing with overflow questions after this webinar, which will be posted later on our YouTube link. The discussion will be recorded and posted online via our social media channels. If you choose to ask a question via the chat box, your name might be displayed during the webinar. Entry has been moderated to guard against trolling. No hate speech, targeting, or discriminating against any community will be tolerated. Any participants using any such speech will be removed from the webinar without any warning. Before quoting any speaker outside of this webinar, please make sure to write to us at contact@zubanprojects.org for clearance. Due to Zoom's lagging issues, we will be premiering the movie on YouTube. And now we'd like to direct you to the YouTube link, which will be available on our chat box. The movie has officially premiered at 2 p.m. Please click on the link, and the movie is for a duration of 20 minutes. And you are requested to join us back within 25 minutes from now. We will start the conversation at 2:30 p.m. sharp. The link to the movie will still remain active till 4 p.m. So you can go back to it after the webinar as well. I think now we can go for the premiere of the movie, and then we'll come back at 2:30 p.m. to start the conversation.
पहले ज्यादा सर्वे करने वाला को और ज्यादा रेस्पेक्ट करता था आदमी लोग ना.
No divorce system, because the husband pays the bridal price to the female.
When you are at the core of being a woman, then you don't have any rights. You're not given any political value.
Though women is considered as the caretaker, nurturer of the land, she doesn't have the right to inherit that land.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. We're back at 2:30. We'll put the link on the chat again for people who have missed the movie. But please stay on for the discussion because the movie will be up till 4 p.m. So you can still watch the movie once the discussion is over. I am now passing it on to Jarjum, who will start the discussion. Jarjum, you can switch on your video and audio.
So once again, welcome to the panel discussion, and thanks to Karry and her team, the Wildflower team, for the beautiful documentary. And of course, thanks to Zuban for the project, which has brought us together on the issue. As moderator, I would like to appreciate the fact that the filmmakers, they have emphasized on lawmaking, and they seem to be of the opinion that once women become effective participants as lawmakers, things might change. I would actually like to listen to Leki Thungon, our academician in Delhi from West Kameng district, and of course to Karry herself, because they are from the younger generation. I come from the generation which actually thought these practices of polygyny, may it be through child marriages or forced marriages or voluntary elopements or arranged marriages or even love marriages, leading to polygyny and its various effects on the society and especially on the status of women in Arunachal Pradesh. We thought education will bring the changes. We thought, the modern culture of individually empowered women will bring changes. But somehow, over the last 2.5 decades, we have seen, whereas erstwhile polygyny usually happened through arranged marriages or forced marriages, now educated, very highly qualified, professionally capable, and financially empowered, even young women are also getting into multiple marriages, in polygynous marriages. And I would actually, along with all the participants, like to listen to Leki and Karry. So over to Leki first. After the introductory documentary screening, we have a perspective on the legal angles through Advocate Pritam Tafo, and of course through the anthropologists from the university, and of course from the filmmakers themselves. So Leki, can I request you to please make your presentation?
Thank you, Jarjum ma'am, for that very insightful comment and question. First of all, hello everyone. Thank you for joining all of us. I would like to congratulate Karry and her team for producing this brilliant movie, asking really difficult questions, but questions that are crucial not only um, for women's rights in Arunachal Pradesh, but also raises question of identity, tribal identity, particularly in Arunachal Pradesh, and where does law stand here, right? Uh, Before addressing the question that Jarjum ma'am asked, and what I have prepared is also actually in relation to that. What I would like to highlight, at least from my perspective, I felt like the film was largely asking one question. And even if not, perhaps that is one question through which we should all look at is that can we imagine ourselves to belong without being possessed or appropriated, right? What does it mean to belong, but not be possessed, but not be appropriated? And I think it was great that Karry and her team met with anthropologists, sociologists, legal activists. We got perspective from different side on polygyny in some tribes of Arunachal Pradesh. I feel like this question about belonging and possession can actually be extended in a larger context when you start looking at Arunachal Pradesh relationship with the rest of India, quote unquote Northeast relationship with the Indian nation state. So I would actually like to work with categories here. And what I will be looking at is gender relation and tribal identities in the context of a nation state, and of course the sovereign law that comes about, right? So I feel like once we start watching movies being produced, films that are raising such important questions, especially when it has to do with not only gender specific rights, but also talking about a particular minority community or communities. I think it's very important to underline, especially in the context of India, that we should go beyond binaries. We should be careful of not using binaries between modernity and tradition. And these are the same binaries that has framed tribal as backward, tribal as archaic. So I would like to suggest that we underline the importance of the fact that tradition need not necessarily be archaic. And we need to go beyond these categorical binaries. Now, on the other hand, the other social institution at place that we find here is family, right? And family and kinship system. And it becomes really integral in Karry's film because you see families where gender social norms are being established, re-established, and reified. And this family, of course, is not isolated, not somewhere just suspending in S, but it's actually also needs to be contextualized in the nation state. Right. So what we find here is that family is interesting, at least from a sociological, anthropological, and even a feminist perspective, is because it sits in this really interesting position of private and public, right? So as many people that Karry had interviewed in the film talk about the fact that family is it's a private matter and so on and so forth, of course, to bypass serious questions. But it's also this that the family is private, but on the other hand, it is also where laws act upon. And this is not only the formal law, but also customary laws act upon. It is also where social divisions based on gender are reproduced literally. So these are some of the challenges that we have to keep in mind, I believe, and these are some of the questions that I think the film raises. The second question that the film actually raised for me, and that is really important, as Jarjum ma'am also addressed here, is that what is the relationship between sovereign law and customary law, right? And there is a dilemma that a lot of women's rights groups in Northeast, and not just specific to Arunachal, are actually grappling with this. That where do you draw the line? Because historically, we have seen that the Indian nation has used laws not only to liberate and so on, but has also used laws to codify identity. Laws has also been used to, so law has been a field in which you find a contestation, a negotiation between nation, the nation state, and local systems of power and social relations and so on and so forth. So where would then we are then in sort of a dilemma here, because one knows the limitations of customary law, which of course get represented and gets repeated again and again in village councils, for instance. So you have Gauburas presiding over cases of polygyny and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, we have also seen legal codification would give a lot of power to judges and lawyers. And as some of the statistics that Karry's also showed, then we are really considered about is law then willing to open up its space for voices of women, voices that will challenge patriarchy. Because even if you look at personal laws, we have the Hindu Marriage Act, the Christian Marriage Act, the Muslim Act, and of course the New Marriage Act. Within law itself, personal law seems to be built on mainstream mainland Indian categories, right? So where would a very diverse place like Arunachal Pradesh stand here? What would be the implications of such legal codification? This is just a question at large that I would also like Karry to step in, and perhaps Jarjum ma'am, since he has the experience in this. However, having said all this, what is really powerful about this film is the voices of women, that it is a women's led movement, and they themselves are asserting their identity that is situated both in the local, but also informed by national, international discourses on women's rights, autonomy, equality, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, it seems to be, the film seems to raise a possibility, show us that there is a possibility to think of, to belong to some place without being possessed by it. So you can belong to a society without being possessed or appropriated by it, belong to a family, a clan, a tribe, even a nation, without being possessed by it. And I think in this sense, feminist politics becomes really integral. The question that Jarjum ma'am asked both of us, and it's a great question, something that we all have been grappling with, is that we think that education would be instrumental in bringing about change. We also think that by populating positions of power with women might be helpful. And this is where I go back to my point about women's voices. I think we have to repeatedly, we are reminded repeatedly that a women's body, in quotes, does not necessarily represent women's voices everywhere, right? And that is one of the reasons why patriarchy should also be looked at as as an ideology, as an institution, as structural and systemic, right? And it's a series of, and it's not just patriarchy, that is economic and political systems at place that always that seems to be putting women in sort of a worse position, right? So women are therefore then oftentimes, because of structural limitations, compelled to compromise in that sense, or rather negotiate those patriarchal political and social structures. So they would, of course, risk whatever they can and not push forward, right? So to answer, I don't know if that was answering Jarjum ma'am's question, but yes, I echo with you. This is just a personal opinion that I'm not. I would be a little cynical about just reading plainly that women is equal to feminism, and we have seen that has not been the case. But I would still think that it is great that we have people like Karry now who are making these films. We have various young women coming from the Northeast and raising really uncomfortable questions, not only for the nation state, the Indian, so-called Indian nation state, but also raising questions that people are uncomfortable with, that men are uncomfortable with, and patriarchal systems are uncomfortable with. So I feel like as long as we have spaces and opportunities to produce disappointing women, I think we are fine. We should be fine. I would like to end with an optimistic note. Thank you.
Jarjum, you're muted. Again. Uh, Jarjum, you're muted. Yeah, we can hear you
I'm
now.
sorry. Yeah,
No,
I'm
it's
now.
fine. Thank you.
Thanks to Leki for underlining quite a few issues, especially the tribal identity is something we really need to address. And of course, patriarchy has always been a major, it is the root cause of all the problems as we see today. And the third that I would like to flag here for all of us is will the tribal women who are still governed by tribal customary traditions and laws be better off under a uniform civil code? Although personally I have my reservations, but at an academic level, at a theoretical, I think, level, we need to discuss this, especially because so far, questioning the institution of marriages, especially the polygynous marriages, it has been a core understanding that the women's movement would raise this, or the women's rights activists would be questioning it, and many a times the whole concern expressed by people have been seen more as anti-man, because predominantly they think marrying many women is the prerogative and privilege of the tribal man. So the debate needs to go on, and it should not be a women-led initiative, but as of now, it should be led by the community, a community where men and women, the tribal communities, men and women, where they have been equally participating. In fact, in the documentary, Karry has and her team has basically mentioned about women's, need for more women in decision-making bodies, especially in governance and politics and bureaucracy and all, workforce. But today in Arunachal, with every single tribe having its community-based organization and all of them having a pan-Arunachal platform called the Arunachal Indigenous Tribes Forum, we must ensure and that all these CBOs actually have equal participation of their respective women folk, especially the capable ones. And until and unless we do that, there would be much more the journey towards an egalitarian society would be much more far off. Now over to Karry. Karry, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was nice to hear from all of you. And first of all, thank you everyone for joining. And also thanks to Zuban for giving us this opportunity to be able to make this film. Um, I heard all of you and I'm like, मेरे को क्या बोलना है? Because most of the issues you have spoken about. With Leki, one thing she had pointed out somewhere that how come we still have this thing that if can you mute that? I can hear myself then. So in studio the girls are also watching. The thing is about if it's a private matter or public matter, that is I think is not only with polygyny, but also with other issues also. Could be anything that happens at home. We all say कि नहीं घर का बात है, let's keep it inside and not speak about it. And in that case, a lot of voices are not heard, and a lot of things are not said, and a lot of families and women suffer alone, in the vicinity of their homes. That one, I think that is something, as a community of Arunachali women, we have to think about is all our issues private, or it is something that needs to be brought out and discussed. And also where our Jarjum was saying about the CBOs, involving CBOs and giving women the positions. One thing I'd like to point out, that doesn't happen because there will be a lot of women in the CBOs where these women would be in that party, and they'll be serving food and all the major for that to not involve the women in that group is they make another wing called the women's wing, right? So all the CBOs have a women's wing. Why do you need a women's wing? Where they put another level of women who are president and the whole thing, but the major governing body would still be a man. The president will be a man, the general secretary will be a man. But that doesn't happen that a woman is allowed to be a president. I think Jarjum ma'am was once, that was a very proud moment for us when she was the president of the Kalo Welfare Society. Because that doesn't happen because there is a woman wing for the women so that they cannot participate in the main decision making body, which keeps happening, which has to change for, as she said, I agree with that which has to change to bring women into the decision making process. um, I think making the film is more this making this film is more about, for me and the team, is to bring out these kind of stories and these kind of issues to the world, that not everything is all uh, culture everything is so perfect, and there are issues which needs to be talked about, spoken about, and discussions that needs to be pulled out, and the public should come together to discuss such issues. um, if you show this film in Arunachal, it's like ये सब तो हमको सबको पता है, we know what is all this, but what else always is the question. What else after this? So I would want a lot of people to watch this film outside Arunachal. Because Arunachali, I have a feeling that when things happens inside, we are mostly like we are like, हाँ चलो अंदर हो जाता है, it's fine. But when people start questioning us in outside Arunachal, then you pay attention. कि अच्छा ये बात बाहर discuss हो रहा है, so we should discuss about it. So I think this is something, and about um, I think that is all I want to say.
So essentially, Karry's position or stance is that we know the problem that we have on hand, and then we just have become comfortable living with the problems. We are not looking for solutions. I think that's why maybe we have problems, stamped on our backs, which we can't see, but we know we are carrying it stamped on our back. And until and unless someone actually points to us and say, hey, you're, you have got it, we are not interested, or we may forget to talk about it. So that's true. In fact, in the mid-90s, when we're starting to talk about customary laws, why it's important. Like in the film also, the convener of the Arunachal Pradesh Women's Welfare Society, our mother NGO here, and Miss Tojum, as a single mother, a single parent, she has talked about. There are lots of issues, and the film is I Am Property. Now, I am property, so I cannot own property. That's one major issue. And we also think that economic empowerment of the girl child or her equal access to inheritance of ancestral or parental property, or even for married women, her assured inheritance rights to properties, perhaps would change the equation. Instead of I am property, we will also be able to say, okay, I can also inherit property, I can also own property. Today many wives of rich people have lots of property. In fact, officially the properties are in the names of the wives, but again the control of those properties are by the husbands or by the male relatives who actually um, decides what to do with it. So these are very interesting dynamics. And so far as polygyny is concerned, many people ask us why we have not been as vocal or as vociferous as we used to be in the late 80s or early 90s, or even today the Women Commission is actually um, uh, under the deluge of cases where educated women are uh, voluntarily going in for multiple uh, marriages, like with already married men and all. So the Arunachal Pradesh Women's Welfare Society, the Women's Commission, the State Legal Services Authority, all of them have joined hands, and they are trying to create both awareness about the need for registration of marriages, compulsory registration, unfortunately, which again, when the parliament legislated it, it was compulsory registration of marriages. But in Arunachal, it was the nomenclature was changed in 2008, I think, or 2007, to say it was, just for records of marriages. So whatever records or registration, it is a record, fine, but then it is registered in the magistrate's court. So it's important. That's for protection. But unfortunately, again, married women whose husbands are entering into multiple marriages, they are not complaining. Actually, we ought to have some heads rolling to bring in the necessary social impact on the community or the society's psyche for taking law more seriously. Or many times we get to hear to young children saying, like, ever since my father brought this second or third mother, so we have had problems at home, and now my academic performance has gone low. These kind of, the ramifications of polygyny is not being acknowledged. We must acknowledge it. And Vidisha, I would like you to actually, bring forth the questions if you have collated.
Yeah, Jarjum, I've just sent it to you on chat, but do you want me to read those out?
Yeah, that would be good, because I
Okay.
can't see the chat.
Okay, sure.
I don't know.
We're not we're not reading out the comments, but we'll just read
Okay.
out the questions that have been put forward. And I'm not mentioning who's
Okay.
putting the questions because everyone can see it on the chat box.
It's okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, the questions are: what is and this is for everyone. What is the relationship between the wives? Is there any pattern of domestic violence? Uh, has there been any instance of property ownership by women, and how have those come about? And this is, I'm going to put these questions together. If a woman manages to pay back the bride price, is she allowed to leave her husband? And who decides the price that the man pays for marrying the woman? So I think between Karry, Leki, and Jarjum, you can just decide who's responding, or Jarjum, you can just point out. Yeah.
Okay. I would
One
like
more
the
last.
young ladies to take over. Yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe Karry can take this because this is not really my area.
Or okay, in that case, Karry, would you like to take it? Take the questions?
Yeah, I didn't, I only got the
You,
one where we spoke about, yeah, the
yes,
bride price.
I can just quickly go over. There's a question on domestic violence and the relationship between the wives. There's another question on property ownership by women and how have these come about. And the last question, which is like two questions, but it's almost similar, is who decides the bride price? And if the woman can pay back the bride price, is she allowed to leave her husband?
I think out of this, I can only speak about the bride price because I think Jarjum ma'am has more, experience on the patterns of the domestic violence cases in Arunachal, and also the property ownership issues, because I think since they have been in APWWS for a long time, they have been fighting this battle of property ownership by women of Arunachal Pradesh. A bride price is properly known that the family decides the work कि अगर what kind of family she comes from, and if she's a rich woman, and and also her husband is rich, they pay a very good price for the bride price, like 10 mithun's 20. It's a show of usually it's a show of somebody's power and their uh, and the stand in the clan and the society. And yes, but to give back the bride price, there'll also be a customary kaba and the village council. It also has to go through that, where they will just sit and decide ki, she'll have to give back how much, and this is the amount they had given during the wedding, and she has to give back. That way she can leave the marriage. That is, I think, of my knowledge, if Judge ma'am can add on that also.
Yeah. Traditionally, in the olden days when we were children, I had a relative who used to actually, if one wife made a mistake, he used to line up all his wives and thrash them. And there were some husbands who would not get fed because he had been visiting the one wife, or less or more, things like that. Relationships initially, if especially when those days when a man, actually a wife, agreed to a second or third marriage because she could not bear a son because of male child preference in a patrilineal society, tribes. They used to initially try to adjust, but in some cases where the first wife was very, very elderly, and there was no competition in terms of physical sharing or emotional securities, there have been some good congenial relationships, but generally among almost same age and all, there has been tussles. And yes, domestic violence, polygynous marriage practices, or adulterous relationships, or they have caused lots of domestic violence, especially for the first wife, because she would be the usual one who would protest and all. And yes, it's very interesting dynamics, about this question on property ownership. In many multiple marriages, where husbands are especially government servants or well-placed bureaucrats or technocrats, administrators, it has been seen that the husband is willing to right away, write off or just sign on the property, bequeathment. He's okay, when the first wife says, I want this building, that vehicle, the bank balance, that landed property, and that I'll not remarry. I'll remain as the mother of the children, and you can do whatever, and the husband happily sign off these properties in the name of the first wife. These ownerships have happened, and later on, in some cases, it has also been reported that these men, very clever men, they would again go to the court and say, actually, I don't want to kind of give away this property, so I take it back, because it's not a final uh, uh, decision. It can always be reviewed. So, but in some cases where the wife has not contended with father, I think as a retired wife, they have continued. And about the bride price, actually, every tribe has different, ceilings. In some places where the women have no property to take with her, there are limitations, and when there are exchange of lots of movable properties, the bride price usually paid in terms of mithuns. It can go up to 70, 100 mithuns also. Um, so it's usually decided by the community they live in. But like in the uh, present evolving scenario, they don't call it bride price in some places. They are saying these are traditions, traditional rituals, and transactions for settling a marriage. But where there has been heavy payments, women are usually subdued unless the return gifts or the jewelries or the movable properties the bride had taken as a stridhan was equally important. And yes, about the registration of marriages, it is under Special Marriage Act. But again, going back to the identity issue, if the tribals of Arunachal, the tribal communities of Arunachal, would like to continue with their uh, integrity as tribals, uh, to continue with their cultures and identity as tribals, it actually should take over this registration process and say, okay, so and so has been married into our village as part of the social rituals, our tribal, rites. So that should also happen, but somehow that's not happening. We have been requesting this needs to be taken up, and it can happen only when the CBOs are gender sensitized. They are culture, not just talking about the community, but also the futuristic need for retaining their respective tribal cultures. And polygyny, actually, not all tribes were practicing some decades ago. Like I remember the Tangsas of Changlang district, they were a monogamous community, but some 2.5 decades back, some influential, political persons started, and although the community at large have looked down upon that person or family, somehow it's been introduced. Otherwise, traditionally, I think in the Tani belt, among the Nishi, Apatani is again very limited, but the Tagins, Galos, and the Adis, this group had mostly this thing. And in some places, there have been multiple marriages, but again, it was more like serial monogamy rather than polygamy. But it's almost a very popular practice as of now, as we see the evolving trend.
Thank you, Jarjum. I just like to mention that we are extending the session for 10 more minutes because we have a lot of questions and we'll try to address most of them. The next question is a couple of questions combined. Some of them Jarjum has already responded to. So I'm just going to put this together. Can you describe a little more about the ongoing movements taken up by women? Who are opposing polygyny, as in saying playing cards and marching as the films began. And connected to that is another question: ki, women's organizations working on this issue, have they been able to gain insights into why educated women are choosing to enter these traditional marriage arrangements, and what is their agency within these setups?
Can you go slow? Repeat the questions.
I will do that.
Yeah.
I think the first one is talking about women's organizations that have taken up this within their movements. And talked about the visuals Curry used in the beginning of the movie, where the women were seeing taking placards and marching, and also how women's organization are looking at the practice of educated women entering these marriages, and what are the agency what is the agency within these setups.
Okay. Uh, the particular shot about the women carrying placards, I think it was by the church women. Some 3,000 church women had gathered, and they had I think done a this thing, picket or some dharna. I was not in town those days, so I missed it. So it's different organizations are taking it up, especially community-based women's organizations. They are voicing it. So far as I know, so many things are happening simultaneously, and many often, like what's right now happening in India, economic side, there has been a slide politically, socially, similarly in Arunachal. On the one hand, women are being empowered and said, you have to wear uh, marital signs, symbols, and they are happily doing it. And some are even getting it in beads, very precious, valuable, costly beads. Some are doing it with gold, and more like the Mangal Sutras of the Hindus. Uh, for someone skeptical like me, my question is, uh, does these symbolisms protect the women from domestic violence? Does this symbolism actually entitle the women to inherit marital properties of her, jointly owned by herself and her husband? Does this symbolism actually protect her marriage from a second or third marriage? Or does this symbolism actually enhances her status in the society as an empowered woman? Or does this symbolism actually ensures that she is treated at par with uh, the her partner within the family? Or so that's one. And many of our sisters are more into those through, because there are lots of cultural and religious organizations coming up, and it's seriously, it's under the influence of both the church and the Hinduism, and of course traditionally we have the Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. Now we are getting to hear that Islam is also making inroads to Arunachal, so that religious impact is also happening. Otherwise, the issue of polygyny actually has been taken up by the Apex Tribal Women's Organization, with which I have been working since the mid-80s, the Arunachal Pradesh Women's Welfare Society. In fact, you can all congratulate and wish them. APWWS is going to celebrate its 41st Foundation Day tomorrow, 10th October. So now APWWS has, I think, almost 40 branches and affiliate bodies all over the state. And through these organizations and its members, the concerns of women folk, especially the polygynous marriage and the status of women, have been taken up, and it continues. And the Arunachal Pradesh State Commission for Women looks into the legal aspects and gives the official backup to the movement. And the State Legal Services Authority has been very sensitive, and so it has been supporting the education, legal education, and the need for registration of compulsory registration of marriages. But again, very slow, time consuming. Yeah.
Thanks,
What else?
Jarjum. The next question, I think it was directed to Karry. It congratulated you for the film, and it also they also talked about the imagery you presented in the film, spoke of for the silencers you are trying to give voice to. I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the reasons for the men to be so willing to come forward to be filmed? And I'm quoting directly from their question. Karry, would you like to respond to this? Karry, you're muted.
As in the process of making the film, I also read some of the comment box. So in the question, a lot of people are asking, ki, why don't we have the testimony? We did have a lot of testimony. One, I think I've also recorded a couple of them in Jarjum ma'am's home also once in a gathering. But there is always this case of giving us the releases to be able to to be able to uh, publish them in the film. So it's a very technical sense of thing. Without the releases that they allow us to use their footages and their quotations for the film. um, we have actually used a lot of their voices in the narratives and also in the way we wanted to show the film. That's why a lot of women did not wanted to come to the film because क्या होता है कि our society is they always there is still the taboos of of the polygynous marriage and women who are in polygynous marriage. We also do it sometimes. This is the second wife, and the people will judge them for their choices. In the meanwhile, we also have to understand why these women come for this polygynous marriage because of their own to be the second wife or the third wife, also because of their own financial conditions, their family conditions. That if she gets married into even as a second wife or a third wife of a rich man, she will be able to give her children a better life. She'll have some kind of value in the society. And also, her brothers and sisters, her family members, will have an elevated sense of lifestyle, which, as a woman from a backward community, from a lower income family, won't be able to have in life. And as usual, and she'll not even own the property of her own family. But when she marries into a richer man's family, she gets to enjoy that luxury and also give it to her family. And you see a lot of these women also, the second and the third wife, they are from very financially not capable backgrounds. um, Also, coming back to your question, Vitisha, is why do men wanted to come? I think it's a sense of pride. Yeah, I think we had mentioned in the film also a lot of men agreed, and they were like, "Chalo, chehra bhi le lo, it's fine," कि किया है हमने शादी, so it is fine. And because it is allowed for them, and it is allowed for women also, but to be in the polygynous marriage, but uh, women are not looked up to with that respect. कि अरे second wife है बोल के, तो she doesn't get that respect. But the men get that respect because you are able to own so many women. That's why you have more respect. You are able to run 2 or 3 or 4 families at the same time. That's why you have more respect in the society, and it is prevalent in our societies कि जितना ज़्यादा wife है, he'll be called the dhani guy and the rich guy. So um, that's why men were very willing to come. and women's we had to, you know, and some of them we ourselves said, "Ki, chalo, we'll just not put the women's here in the film because uh, क्योंकि बाद में after the film is done we all had this discussion of whole feminism and everything and all this discussion. They are the ones sitting at home and sitting in their own society and clans, and they are the one getting the backlash and saying कि हाँ बहुत बोल रहा है, you know, coming into the film and all. So it was safer for them, you know, safety for them that we did not include them in the film, and we did not get a lot of releases also. They did not sign the release forms.
Thank you, Karry. Yeah, I remember us having so many conversations around this and trying to figure out a way, and I'm glad that we did. I think you've already responded to a question in your response right now, which talked about women being accountable, held accountable for choosing to stay in marriages, especially after holding secure jobs. And I think you pointed out how financial independence and patriarchy also plays into this situation and the concept of respect. So I think we can move on to the last question, which is talking about bride price and how it is prevalent in many tribal communities within the Northeast. Someone had a question about drawing the line between preserving our customs and practices and allowing progressive change in our customs. Is the practice of bride price fundamental to our tribal identity? Combining this with the last part, how is the condition of this is also something that came out after the last bit, is that after paying back the bride price, if the woman goes back, what is her condition? So I think anyone, Jarjum, maybe you can choose who can respond to this.
Okay. Actually, divorces or staying single and all. Of course, single people have been always concerned, you know, what will happen in old age and all. But divorces is not looked down upon, especially in many of the communities. It's that kind of liberty at least is given. But of course, bride price, repaying bride price has been uh, difficult for many women, especially when parents are not well off or they are no more, and you know, siblings are not in position to pay back. But status normally, like, you know, once she's separated or divorced officially, like, you know, socially, it doesn't really impact except her economic condition. Uh, about preservation of customs and practices vis-a-vis allowing progressive changes in customs. Actually, this is, I personally feel it's quite possible. When we have been able to continue with our, you know, traditional belief systems and also access to medical services or to the modern privileges of the, you know, new society, educated society. Similarly, customs and practices, the good ones need to be identified and preserved, and there has to be justification of why it is good, how it is good, and why it has to be preserved. And in their places, which are necessary, uh, those progressive changes can take place. Now, just for example, uh, as Karry mentioned, perhaps I have been the only tribal woman to head respective, you know, tribal community-based organizations. I was 2 times president of the Gala Welfare Society, which is the apex, rather the executive body of the apex traditional council, the Galo Banagam. Now, in 2008, that was one tenure before I became president, uh, there was this community decision to allow the married Galo women to continue using her maiden surname. Traditionally, once married, like, you know, a Galo woman or Galo girl had to give up her maiden surname, her father's surname, and immediately be known as so and so, like, you know, just to identify that she's married to his tribe. Now, how Galo women are now allowed to socially uh, allowed to use her maiden surname, and at the end she can add her husband's surname to identify that she was born as so-and-so and married to so-and-so. Like in my case, among the Galo people, now I am known as Jarjum Ete. Now I was born into a Gamlin family and married into an Ete family. But again, many educated women who have lots of certificates and documents, it's very difficult for them to change all the documents to her marital surname. So the society also said, oh, these days women folk, they have so many documents starting from her birth certificate to her post graduation, PhD, or many other driving licenses or things like that. So they said, okay, let them continue using the surname of her maiden time and do that. But interestingly, now many husbands don't even question which surname a wife is using in her service book or in her official communications on records, because people are now getting to be more understanding, because naam se kya hai. No, so long as she is our daughter-in-law, she is our mother, she is our my wife, whatever name surname she uses, it doesn't matter. So many husbands don't even question. So those are the changes which are being allowed and which is happening. Whereas, again, some people are starting to question when a single girl, single lady decides to adopt a child, and the single lady continues with her maiden surname, and some people are saying, no, the child cannot be given her surname. Come on, there has to be changes. So we need to have more discussions, and of course solutions will come. Solutions won't come until and unless we talk about, we discuss, which is why Karry said, she wants people outside the state to see and discuss the issue, so that the impact, it reverberates back to Arunachal, and the people will say, okay, people are talking about us in this light outside Arunachal, so let's change it. So now interesting thing is, the political leadership, which actually we thought were the root cause of popularizing polygyny, is now some younger generation leaders, they are being very responsible. They want to be, the good, husband, good father. That image is being created, and we appreciate that. With that kind of image building and reinforcement and appreciation by the larger community or the world at large, I think it will also discourage, people who might stumble into the unnecessary second, third, fourth wives, that kind of multiple marriages. And yes, I actually appreciate Ranju for that question. Yes, in the feminist movement, in the women's movement, we always say we believe in women's rights, but we don't believe that all women are right. And in the perpetuation of this traditional, which was actually the prerogative of the well-to-do village man or the tribe elder, today is being enjoyed. They think it's supposed to be kind of an enjoyment of a privilege by all men, which is not true. But yes, we hold every woman accountable, educated or not, with jobs or not, accountable, who enters into a second or third marriage, because many men have always been telling us, when the man married a second or third time, he is not marrying another man but women. So you tell the women, the girls, not to get into multiple wives situation. But my appeal has always been, and even now and in the future also, is girl child is also a product of this society. She learns from her environment. So if we want our daughters to inculcate that value system, we as elders must refrain from encouraging or accepting polygyny in our families, in our community at large, because and that can happen if we prioritize the privileges or the rights of our children or the unborn generation. They are privileged to undiluted love and care and attention from the parents to become wholesome citizens of the community. It's possible. And it's wonderful to see young fathers actually carrying their little babies and putting up on social media, Twitters and Instagram and Facebooks, and even sharing on family WhatsApp groups. I think this changing culture where parenting was supposed to have been the domain of the mothers, the men, the fathers who have this maternal instinct, we need to encourage. And I see changes. And I, for one, appreciate that a lot, because I've been in this movement against polygyny for so many years. Changes are happening, but yes, our daughters, our girls need to be much more responsible. And very interestingly, men are going from one woman to another woman who are already economically independent, who are not dependent on the husband. So she has her own household, her own setup, and she is not a kind of threat to the existing wives. So these kind of scenarios has also led to multiple marriages. And many often, as we saw in the movie, in the documentary, the first family is the priority, and traditionally, and the second in terms of inheritance and all. If young girls know that her children would never have access to inheritance of ancestral rights and properties, if she is married to an already married man, she would also perhaps refrain from becoming just another number in someone's life. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations to all.
Thank you, Jarjum. I think we've overshot our time a bit.
Yeah.
So I'll just ask.
No, we needed to introduce the team.
Yeah, we needed to introduce the team, and I just wanted to ask Leki to come in for closing comments, but we can just do the quick introduction of the Wildflower production team. And we have Rinchin Chodan, Priya Badu, and Yomge Chisi. So I think they're joining through Karry's Zoom.
We'll just see them in one frame.
Sure.
I'll just push it a little back. Can you move that? Yeah,
Yes.
That's Rinchin.
Hi, Rinchin.
Please introduce them.
Congratulations, guys. Amazing.
Introduce them.
Yeah.
This is Riddhi and Priya and Yomga. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
All the best. Well
Thank
done.
you so much. So Leki, if you would like to just come in for a minute and just wrap up, and then we'll close the.
I would like to thank everyone for participating here, and definitely thank Karry and her team for making this film, and Jarjum Ete ma'am. I think this is a great time to remember all those collective and individuated efforts that people like Karry and Jarjum Ete ma'am have been making, and which has actually made this particular event possible. So we are in that sense indebted to many people who came before us and actually paved the way for us to talk about this and be disappointing women. I think I would like to end with this, with the note that it's great to see responsible young women coming out, like Karry's underlining point about how do you produce something which is honest, sincere, and ethical is really important. And I think that's a very important point that to be remembered for anybody working on the grounds, that our stakes are very different from the stakes of the people who are there in the field. And and of course, the conversation that Jarjum Ete ma'am has raised is something that we should all carry along with ourselves. And the question that also came, thank you for all your comments and questions. I think we have to keep reminding ourselves that even culture, for that matter, is not timeless. It is constantly evolving and changing and is susceptible to all kinds of forces and factors. And somewhere we have to engage with this idea that we can never really be outside of law. In this case, I'm talking about the sovereign law. And we have to understand that when it comes to customs, identities, a lot of time these questions are delimited by the legal framework, and it's always a tussle, always a place of negotiation. So as long as we keep different narratives and discourses and debates and discussions going on, it will be great. I would also like to thank Zuban and the entire team for making this project possible and this event possible. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Karry. Thank you, Jarjum, so much for agreeing to moderate this discussion and providing so many insights into the workings of our polygyny works and also the women's movement in Arunachal Pradesh. Thank you so much, Karry, for making this film and for being with us and for putting up with us for 2 years. It's been wonderful working with you, and I think we will continue working with many other projects. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Uh, we just wanted to say that the recording of this webinar will be put online on YouTube. And to view our previous webinars on a crisis of care or through her lens, reframing the domestic, please click on the link in the chat box, and it's available on our YouTube channel as well. For future events, please follow us on social media, and hopefully we'll see all of you soon. Thank you so much.